hey, how's it going?
We're doing okay. We're doing okay. It's nice to hear your voice. So what's happening with BlackRock here? Because we have seen Larry Fink maneuver in some ways in a non-nefarious way, but in a very effective way, at least not nefarious that we know of, into the conversation here. What is BlackRock up to?
So BlackRock has been coming up a lot in the past couple months because the firm is taking a huge role in the Federal Reserve's bailout of the corporate bond market. And so what BlackRock is doing is it's acting in a kind of expanded capacity. It had a role in the last crisis, and now in this one, it's buying corporate debt on behalf of the Fed and buying agency commercial mortgage-backed securities on behalf of the Fed. So really playing a central role in the Fed's hundreds of billions of dollars of its rescue program.
Annie, I totally get why this is among our most read stories on the Bloomberg. It's been that way all day. So I'm just thinking for a casual listener, they're going to be like, okay, it sounds like BlackRock's getting a great deal and they've got an, in with the government. So explain the relationship, why it's necessary. Just take us there.
Sure. So if you think about the Fed, the Fed's wheelhouse is obviously buying government debt. But when it comes to something like this, the unprecedented, rescue plan that they have for the corporate bond market, they're not necessarily carrying out those measures themselves, going out into the market and, valuing and buying corporate debt themselves. So that's why they need an asset manager to come in and do that on their behalf. So the Fed is BlackRock's client in this case, and BlackRock will perform that function for them. They'll buy newly issued bonds from companies. They'll buy existing bonds. They'll buy some debt ETFs. And that is, one big piece of this mandate that BlackRock's been handed over. And so they're turning to BlackRock for their expertise in those markets, and also for some of the risk technology that they have that can help in that process.
So who ultimately owns it? The Fed?
So what's happening is BlackRock is buying the debt on behalf of the Fed, so it's acting as the investment manager.
And so, Annie, remind us too, Larry Fink, a very, very important figure on Wall Street, and I believe was rumored to maybe have been considered for a cabinet post had there been a Hillary Clinton presidency. He's been a pretty close advisor, frequent advisor to the current president, right?
Yep, that's right. So you kind of see BlackRock having the ear of all kinds of administrations, both Democratic and Republican. But that's absolutely right that there was a lot of intrigue around whether Larry Fink would be considered as a potential Treasury Secretary in a potential Hillary Clinton administration. We've seen those kinds of rumors come back up now for a potential Joe Biden administration. So over the years, especially since the financial crisis, BlackRock's gone from having a pretty limited presence in D.C. before that to really a huge relationships down there.
Right. It's complicated, as they say. What's interesting, though, as you said, they're buying the debt on behalf of the Fed, so they are the investment manager for the Fed. Essentially, they're an investment manager for Americans, right? For the country to make sure they make smart investments, because ultimately the Fed will sell these investments back to the marketplace.
That's exactly right. It's a really critical role in basically this mission to prop up the corporate debt markets. And understandably, it's brought up a lot of considerations over, okay, how are they going to manage conflict of interest? Because BlackRock's a huge firm. Obviously, on other sides of the firm, they're participating in debt markets. So there's, knowledge of what the Fed is doing could be useful.
Right.
So what they say in their contract with the Fed is, listen, there are strict information barriers between what that side of the business, their financial markets advisory side of the business, which is the piece that's working for the Fed. There's there's a wall up basically between
Right.
that and the rest of our firm. But that's been, one of the questions that keeps coming up as people look at this deal.
Right.
They wonder how
Right.
well will those be managed.
And how
It's
does
hard
it all
not to
fit
call
together?
them an insider, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
come on.
It's pretty amazing. All right. Well, she's our insider, Annie Massa, investing reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from New York City. Great reporting, one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg. Not surprisingly, BlackRock, they got a big job. They got a lot of money. They got an influential CEO. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. More Americans are behind on their mortgage. Delinquency surged in April by 1.6 million, the biggest monthly gain ever, after the government allowed homeowners who lost income in the pandemic to delay payments without penalty. And homeowners aren't alone. Mall of America, the nation's biggest shopping center, is also behind. It missed its April and May payments on a $1.4 billion loan. Paying for Netflix but not watching, the company plans to check in with inactive customers and ask if they still want the service. Those who don't respond will have their accounts canceled. Stocks remain modestly lower in the final hour. Rising tensions between the U.S. and China and dismal readings on home resales and weekly jobless benefit claims have been weighing on the market all day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 104. The S&P 500 down 20. The Nasdaq Composite is down 70. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. On days when it seems there are nothing but questions,
What about the pandemic emergency purchase program in Europe?
What's the medical side of this?
we try to ask good ones.
How long until we have an answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
How do you think this has the potential to rattle markets?
Does that mean we should shut down?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
It's a rather controversial question being asked.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
If knowledge is power, the Bloom...
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in the front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I went up high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And For a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Remember when we used to talk about IPOs?
I do remember that.
In the good
initial
old
public
days.
offerings, isn't that what they stand for?
I'm going to be reading to Alice. Once upon a time, Alice, there were initial public offerings.
Companies, privately held companies, she would be so interested in that. Privately held companies, controlled by a small number of shareholders, don't have public shares, but then they do an IPO. Magic happens.
Happy endings? We don't know.
I would have to put it in the context of Frozen, but in any case.
Every time I look at you, I see the Frozen stickers on her wall, and I'm like...
It's the best. I was on a call with all the bureau chiefs from around the entire region, and I saw them looking at my Frozen stickers. In any case, we'll talk about, probably not Frozen, but we are going to talk about IPOs
Kelly.
with the chart of the day. All right, first, let's get back to Charlie Pellet. He's sort of a fairy tale hero.
All right, let's let it go. We got 28 minutes to go with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ. They are all declining right now. Stocks falling, rising trade tension between the U.S. and China, adding to concern about the pace of recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. Crude oil rebounding from an earlier swoon. Gold is declining. Here's where we stand. First of all, let's begin with equities. S&P down 19, a drop now of 0.7%. The Dow down 85, lower by 0.4%. NASDAQ down 70, a drop now of 0.8%. Your 10-year up 132nd with the yield right now 0.67%. Gold is down 1.3%, $17.25 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 1.7%, $34.06 a barrel. 3:32 on Wall Street. Time now for the Small Business Report, and here's John Tucker.
Well, beaches in New Jersey open this weekend. With restrictions, the move could help struggling restaurants like Uncle Will's on Long Beach Island, though there's uncertainty about just how much foot traffic there's going to be this year. Tom Stewart owns this establishment, which serves food to beachgoers in the area. Tom, tell us what kind of business that you're expecting this summer.
I think that if renters, the vacationers, the tourists decrease, I'm hoping that loss of business will be exchanged by homeowners using their secondary or in some places tertiary homes. As things begin to open up, I'm hopeful that people will once again start to rally and come out and support those small businesses that remain.
Now, the dining room, do you have any clarity on when you'll open the dining room?
Absolutely not. And that's one of the things that is most distressing, that if we could have a plan issued and be part of the solution with our input, number one, it would give hope. And a lot of people down here are comparing this crisis to what we endured 7.5 years ago when Hurricane Sandy made landfall a half a mile south of our restaurant. It was complete devastation with Sandy, but once we got everything cleaned up, it took us 6 weeks to put everything back together. And as fast as you could move and get things dried out, you were able to get reopened. Right now, there's such distress, and I can't even come up with negative adjectives to describe how people feel because we don't know.
Even though you don't know when the doors will open for the dining room, you still have to make changes. Can you describe for me the pivots that you're making?
Absolutely. So we have the hand gels at the doors as you're coming in. We have a plexiglass barrier in front of the counter. We have a thermometer that we are ready to use, an infrared thermometer. As far as the dining room itself, because we're not doing much business, have taken the time now, pulled out a number of tables. We are able to have all of our tables 6 feet apart for when the time comes to allow people back in. I'm sure that we'll be able to put forth an environment in which they feel safe and secure while they're dining with us.
All right, Tom, thanks. Tom Stewart, owner of Uncle Will's restaurant in New Jersey on Long Beach Island. We're going to continue to bring you stories of small businesses struggling, pivoting, and coping in the face of the coronavirus pandemic every day at this time on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Small Business Report.
And we thank you very much, John Tucker. Struggling airlines, they're flying higher today. Among some of the airline names, UAL up 3%, American Airlines Group up 0.1%, Delta up 1.6%, Southwest up by 1.5%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. This is outside of my wheelhouse, Dave Wilson. I feel like Carol Master would be better suited to do this, but she's having a few technical problems right now. She can't help me. Talk to me.
Smokey Robinson and the Miracles doing Going to a Go-Go.
Going to a Go-Go.
Actually covered by the Rolling Stones.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I bet that sounded different.
It did, but it still had that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
And, going to a go-go, that's what companies that have recently come public have been doing lately. They've been going. We're looking back to the March lows and stocks, and I'll tell you, the Renaissance IPO Index, which tracks companies in their first 2 years after their IPOs, really took a beating going into those lows. It was down as much as 38%. Well, since then, it's made back the loss and then some. It's been setting records this week. And what's even more noteworthy is that if you compare this index, which goes back to 2009, to the Russell 3000 index, pretty broad gauge of U.S. companies, it's set a record this week. So in other words, it's not just that the index itself is recovering, it's that these relatively recent IPOs are showing strength that they've never shown before versus the broader market. And to give you some specific examples, there are 8 companies in this index that have more than doubled from the lows in March. And we're talking about companies like Beyond Meat, Moderna, and Uber. I'm not going to say 5 more on top of that, but even Lyft is up more than 90% from the March lows. So, you've seen some of these companies really take off, which kind of gets your attention because, we're still quite a ways if you look at something like the S&P 500, let alone the Russell 3000, of getting back to where we were in February. And this IPO index has managed to do that and then some and show some unprecedented strength, not only in absolute terms when you look at the index, but in relative terms by comparison with the broader market. And if you want to see that comparison, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
So zeitgeist or craziness?
Zeitgeist, that's the way the folks at Renaissance Macro Research, which far as I know is an unrelated firm, said in a Twitter post looking at, the Renaissance IPO Index. And by the way, Carol, would you have known Going to a Go-Go by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles?
Totally. I've actually seen him live. It was a corporate event.
I told Dave that you would have gotten it.
Oh, my God. Tears of a Clown, is one of my all-time favorites.
There you go. See? Well, I'm sorry you weren't here to...
I wouldn't even had to Google or Shazam that one.
Wow.
All right.
Dave Wilson, we'll talk to you after the close of trading. In the meantime, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you. With signs of renewed activity surfacing across the country as states gradually reopen economies and some businesses call a portion of their laid-off staffers back to work. Millions of Americans are seeking unemployment aid. Again, last week, the U.S. job market remains as bleak as it's been in decades. The Labor Department says nearly 39 million people have now filed for jobless aid since the coronavirus forced millions of businesses to close their doors and shrink their workforces. President Trump has spoken with the Senate's Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, about additional steps to boost the economy. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke in a Bloomberg interview about the improving prospects in the Senate.
Well, I'm optimistic because the American people fully support what we are doing. Democratic and Republican mayors, governors, county executives making their voices known. This is very unusual that we have such a strong bipartisan advocacy for legislation, which is meeting resistance in the Senate, but I don't think for long.
Congress could act sooner on a bill allowing small businesses more than 8 weeks to spend the loan money they received under the previous spending bills. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Pandemic politics shadowing President Trump's trip to Michigan today to highlight life-saving medical devices. He is touring a Ford factory outside Detroit at this hour, a facility repurposed to manufacture ventilators. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
How long? How much? How many? This is an important update from the government about coronavirus. We all need to stay alert so we can control the virus and reduce the risk of infection. To stay alert, you must remain at home as much as possible. Work from home if you can. Limit your contact with other people. If you have to go out, keep your distance from others, 2 meters apart where possible. Continue to wash your hands regularly. Do not leave home if you or anyone in your household has symptoms. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights. Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis of the latest wrestling storylines, turn on the WWE podcast.
Big Steve edition.
Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
Because now on the show, everybody's kind of the same size, but as soon as I saw you, it's been...
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL Show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 1948, New York Yankees Joe DiMaggio hits for the cycle.
Pitching for Brooklyn and the Yankees sixth, with runners on first and second and 2 men away. DiMaggio smashes a long drive into deep left field. John Frito, after a desperate twisting run to the 415-foot marker.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Stocks lower across the board. Rising trade tension between the U.S. and China, adding to concern about the pace of recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. Here's where we stand. S&P down 18 points, lower by 0.6%. The Dow is down 76, a drop of 0.3, while Nasdaq is down 66 points, now lower by 0.7%. 10-year yield 0.67%. Gold is up down 1.2%, 17.26 the ounce. Gold dropping $21 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 1.6% right now, $34.04 a barrel on West Texas Intermediate crude. Peter Cicchini has left Cantor Fitzgerald after more than 9 years with the firm. He was formerly Cantor's global chief market strategist. Recapping, S&P down 18, a drop of 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the Drive to the Close. Back with us is David Kudlow. He's CEO and Chief Investment Strategist at Mainstay Capital Management. $2.7 billion in assets under management. David, back with us on the phone from Michigan. How are you? Tell me about Michigan, man. I feel like the state just can't catch a break.
It has been an interesting time in Michigan. We've had certainly we've been one of the states that's been a hotspot for the COVID-19 coronavirus, and certainly because of the auto industry, because of our overall economy here. It's been particularly hard on Michigan. When we see these unemployment numbers, jobless claims, we know that's coming right at the heart of our industry and everyone here in Michigan.
And then the floods.
I'm sorry?
The floods? Am I reading this wrong?
Yeah. In Bay City and mid-Michigan, it's just been incredible with the dam that broke loose, and it's just been devastating.
And so, stepping over to the markets, in the meantime, David, it's been quite a ride there as we have experienced, across these 10 or so weeks of sheltering in place here in New York City, certainly seeing some literal highs and lows. What's your take at this moment, especially on a week where, as Carol pointed out a little while ago, the S&P is still in the green, even with a little bit of an off trade today? Are we finding some stability, or is this just kind of a moment where we're catching our breath?
I think we are. The way that we've played this is, we've gone to the secular growth stories, and specifically that takes us to technology and e-commerce and the cloud stocks and IT that held up really very well through the downturn and have done well even in the rebound. But now we are looking to the cyclicals. We've gone ahead and come back to the cyclicals, leisure and entertainment, come back to ETFs like ITB, the iShares Dow Jones U.S. Home Construction ETF. Those ETFs that are already starting to rebound off these deep lows that they experienced all the way down to the low in the markets in general on March 23rd, and they've just really rallied off those lows already a lot and have that rebound. We think more runway left in them. Now, it could be a bumpy ride. There could be, if we see a second wave that some talk about, or as we reopen the economy, that's a bumpier ride than we expect. But so far so good. I think it's been not too early to come into those names because they've already had a real good rally off the bottom.
Yeah, I got to ask you, that ITB, the iShares Home Construction ETF, I mean, it's up 70% from that March 23rd low. You still think that there's opportunity there, or do you think a lot of the enthusiasm about whatever bounce back we get is already priced in there? How could you not think it's not already priced in there?
Well, because it fell more than 50% from the level it was at down to March 23rd. So, it is, yes, it's come back 70%, but that's really about 2/3 from the bottom. So we think it still has a little bit further we still think it has a little bit further to go, and we think that it still makes sense. Now we're starting to see and I think have enough traction and even feel comfortable enough more recently coming into even names like ETF PEJ, the Invesco Dynamic Leisure and Entertainment ETF. We've been more concerned about some of those sectors, but as planes start flying again, as states start opening up, we talked about Michigan at the beginning of the segment. The northern part of the state is opening up. There are going to be more reopening we've been on a very strict lockdown here in Michigan.
Right.
But as states start opening up, there's a lot of pent-up demand and people that want to get out and about, and we'll see that reflected in these stock prices of the companies in these industries.
What do you think of the automakers? And I thought it was last fall, October, you were short Tesla, and I'm just curious, how you see the automakers. Obviously, an industry that has certainly been impacted by the lockdown. We caught up with the president and CEO of Porsche Cars North America, Klaus Zellmer, this week. About 70 or 80%, I think, of their dealerships here in the U.S. have reopened, but they're learning to do a lot more things digitally. The other thing is they can't meet supply because their production lines have been shut down. So I'm just curious, what are your takes on some of the auto names, David?
Well, there's going to be a significant gap. A lot of the auto dealers are operating on appointment only to continue to deliver cars, but the plants haven't been building. They're just starting to come back online. Production is just starting to come back online with all the producers. So there will be some gaps in inventory. But again, autos will be another area where we'll see that there's also pent-up demand to meet that. So I think that, when we look 3 to 4 months down the road, the autos will be doing very well again. It's really just where they'll see some gaps in inventory here as production comes back online, the auto dealerships open back up, and that pent-up demand gets met.
It is sort of amazing, too. You speak of demand, and you do wonder sort of what the shopping and the retail online versus brick and mortar looks like on the other side of this. That's got to be a tough question to answer.
Yeah, it is. It was interesting coming into this. There's an ETF that we've held before, Clicks. It's a ProShares long online short stores. It was really just a slam dunk, with the government shutting down brick and mortar stores and really forcing or compelling those that weren't even comfortable shopping online to do their shopping in that manner. And, that ETF has just been a stellar performer. It's down today because of those other names we're talking about. It's taking a hit today, but still up over 40% year to date. When the major indexes are still, in negative territory.
And didn't take that hit like you saw from so many other parts of our economy in so many different sectors. It really has just been a move up from, if I take a look in March. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, it's great to catch up with you. We really appreciate it. As always, David Kudla, CEO and Chief Investment Strategist at Mainstay Capital Management, looking after about $2.7 billion, joining us on the phone from Michigan. Always good to get some perspective, from a different part of the country, and also some very specifics on the ETF side, which I feel like so often we sort of talk about it in general, but those are some really specific names, especially the long online short stores. Never heard of that. That's a really interesting play.
We'll put this out on Twitter and certainly in our podcast. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Stick around. We've got the closing bell in just a moment.
When you leave out the rumors,
The illness does not cause...
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up and do Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards, that's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong. The Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Kevin Clark.
If Josh Allen became the 10th best quarterback in football this year, they'd probably win 14 games. Am I wrong about that?
No. If you as a quarterback can't win in the Bills' situation right now, they should not extend you. So many teams, Jets, do not have the information they need to evaluate their quarterbacks based on the teams they built around them. The Bills do.
Listen and subscribe to the Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Search the Mina Kimes Show to listen. Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
The home Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. There you have it. Sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. As we wrap up trading on this Thursday, Lauren Peters, patient coordinator from Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx, New York, ringing that closing bell as we await the latest numbers out of NVIDIA. But first, this headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. U.S. virus cases nationally up 1.5%. That number in line with the past week's average. Stocks fell as rising trade tensions between the U.S. and China added to concern about the pace of recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. Crude oil rebounded from an earlier swoon. Gold declined. Gold down 1.3%, $17.26 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude very close to $34 a barrel now, $33.95, up by 1.4%. 10-year up 2/32 with a yield of 0.67%. S&P down 23, closing at 2948, down 0.8%. The Dow down 101 points, down 0.4%. Nasdaq down 90, a drop there of 1%. Well, as for what is attractive in this market environment, we spoke moments ago with David Kudla, CEO at Mainstay Capital Management.
The way that we've played this is, we've gone to the secular growth stories, and specifically that takes us to technology and e-commerce and the cloud stocks and IT that held up really very well through the downturn and have done well even in the rebound.
SelectQuote, a platform that allows consumers to compare insurance policies, jumped 35% after the company and its existing shareholders raised $570 million in its upsized U.S. initial public offering. Victoria's Secret, which is owned by Limited Brands, says it's going to close 251 stores in North America by the end of this year. Shares of Limited Brands surging 18.2%. Recapping, equities lower with the S&P down 23, a drop today of 0.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me. I got a few moves I know you'll like. Oh, come on, shake him, not stir. Just move on toward your destination.
I can make things move without touching them.
Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, time to take a look at some of the movers and shakers on this Thursday. And we definitely are more of a risk-off trade. Charlie, of course, breaking down those major equity averages, bouncing around, but finishing off our highs and lows of the session. If I look at the S&P 500, 353 names in the index lost ground today. 149 were higher, 3 unchanged, but those major industry groups, pretty much everything was down on the day. So, yeah, it's certainly much more of a negative tone, certainly compared to some of the enthusiasm, Jason, that we saw earlier in the week.
Yeah, and, the enthusiasm that there was around a couple of retail names. Those are your two biggest gainers in the S&P. I mentioned them a little earlier in the show. L Brands, you heard Charlie mention them briefly just a minute ago, and Gap. L Brands leading the way, of course, the parent of Victoria's Secret, up 18%. Wow. And owing to earnings. I mean, one of the questions around there is, what are they going to do around Victoria's Secret? They're going to shut a quarter of those North American stores for Victoria's Secret. And what's interesting is Deutsche Bank coming out and saying L Brand investors are focusing on a clean break, really, from Victoria's Secret, because that Bath & Body Works business, it's doing great on a relative basis from a retail perspective, but You've got your smirk look on.
It's not you, it's me. It's a clean break. Let's have a clean break, okay, and let's move on. That's what this is about, right?
Gets even more complicated when you add Victoria's Secret into the mix there.
Let's not go too deep into it.
It's a little bit of a tortured metaphor there, Masser.
I know. Well, listen, speaking of retail, Ross Stores just crossing the Bloomberg terminal as well. First quarter loss, 87 cents a share versus an estimate of $1.15 year over year, not reporting their first comp store sales. I guess that makes sense, although we still want to know how things are, even if it's bad. First quarter includes 58 cents a share inventory valuation charge. So we'll look for some more details on that. But anyway, another one of the retailers, Ross Stores, they're down about 2% here in the after hours. Stock is down 16-17% for the year overall. NVIDIA, of course, we're still waiting on that one. I don't think it's crossed quite yet, so we'll keep an eye for that. What else are you watching?
Well, interesting, just to go back to Ross Stores there for a second, it's interesting to think about them in part because, I go back to our conversation yesterday, I believe it was, with Yana Barton, talking about some of those discount retailers and sort of how they may do on the other side. I mean, she was mentioning names like TJX, which you and I love, or I love at least.
No, are you kidding?
The sort of like treasure hunt in many ways.
Totally love.
I do wonder, and I think you brought this up, I do wonder about sort of the social distancing that happens in stores like that, because it is all about like pawing through a bunch of stuff and being like, here's the cat t-shirt that I want.
And those stores are usually packed. Like, to get through. So, like, I can't even imagine how they do it. And, do you create, okay, this is going to be the path through the store, folks, and you can't go back. Or if you want to go back, you've got to get back in the line. I do want to mention HP Enterprise because they are a big one in the tech space, crossing with earnings. Second quarter net revenue, $6.01 billion. That's a little light. $6.19 billion was the forecast. Second quarter adjusted EPS, 22 cents versus 42 cents. That's a year-over-year comparison. Net revenues, they are down 16% year-over-year. And they approved a cost optimization and prioritization plan. And the stock here in the after hours, Jason,
it's down
it is
3.5%.
Yeah.
HPE.
Yeah, it's down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Confirmed. It's down.
It's down. All right, let's do the volatility index report. Let me bring it up on my Bloomberg. And the VIX in the Thursday trade, inching up a little bit, up 4.3%. The VIX closing today at 29.2. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Mr. Wilson, Dave Wilson, back with us. Maybe thinking about getting out on the water. You are, Carol Masser? Well,
yes.
Dave Wilson's got a stock for you, Marine Max.
Dave Wilson, aren't you sweet?
I do what I can. Now, this is a company that is a retailer of recreational boats. They have more than 60 locations across the U.S., including one at Pier 59 in Manhattan. They sell new, used, and brokered boats. Marine Max was founded in 1998 and went public that year. The ticker is HZO, kind of like H2O, the chemical formula for water. The company's shares peaked in 2006 and
clever
then
but not. Can I just say clever but not? I mean,
whatever.
I'm just going to say. All right, anyway. Go ahead.
Initially, people thought it was clever. The stock peaked in 2006 and plunged as much as 97% in the next 3 years. They've slumped again this year, falling as much as 57%. Marine Max has rallied, though, in the last 2 months, and the release of fiscal second quarter earnings in April helped lift its shares, as the company said its sales trend had turned positive during the month. Marine Max gave an update today and said April's gains have continued into May. The company also said it reached an agreement with its banks to amend a $440 million credit facility. The deal helped lift the amount of cash on hand or available through the credit line, so total liquidity, if you will, to $140 million from a quarter-end figure of $90 million. And all this sent Marine Max's shares to a 3-month high. They closed with a gain of 9.9%.
If you want social distancing, I'm just going to say go out on the water, like in your own little boat, because that is a way of kind of getting out in the world, but safely in many ways. I mean, I know where we are, there's going to be rules in place about how you get, because usually
you got to get to the marina. You got to get on the dock.
Right. But you can have your own dinghy to get to your own boat, or there's going to be rules about the launch, how many people can be on the launch, and how you do it safely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But I'm just saying, like, once you get out in the water, like, you're pretty okay.
You're out there.
Right?
You're out there with Scout, and Scout's going to look out, and all's good. All right, Dave Wilson, I believe you're off tomorrow, so enjoy that nice long weekend. Play some good music. Hope you get to barbecue.
You're going to go to the beach, Dave Wilson?
I think I'll at least go down for a drive to the Jersey Shore tomorrow to check things out, see what happens as they open up.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, we look forward to catching up with you next week. Have a nice long weekend. All right, let's get a check on world and national headlines now. Ed Baxter is in San Francisco. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Carol. U.S. Senate for a second day in a row is pumped up on China. Today, Senator Chris Van Hollen has introduced legislation that will put sanctions on individuals and banks that cooperate with China in taking away freedoms of citizens of Hong Kong.
So this is intended to send a clear message to China that it should not violate the agreements that it's reached with respect to Hong Kong.
Van Hollen on Bloomberg with Kevin Cirilli. Yesterday, the Senate, by unanimous consent, passed a resolution that would delist some Chinese companies from American exchanges. Today, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi with David Weston on Balance of Power said she definitely will look at it.
Now, whether it's the Uyghurs, the people of Hong Kong, Tibet, you name it, they have been very oppressive and even more so. But the fact is that we have to judge we have to have a relationship with China.
And she also says she feels a compromise can be made now on more stabilization money for the U.S. and that the Senate will end its pause. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says things are moving in the right direction.
Total hospitalizations down. Great news. 5,187. The net change is down. That's good news. Intubations are down. That's very good news.
He says summer school will be done remotely. U.S. virus cases rise 1.5% in line with the past week's average. Dr. Anthony Fauci reiterated today that the country had not better move too fast or there will be dire consequences and says COVID-19 will not be totally defeated until there is a vaccine for the entire globe. Global news 24 hours a day in San Francisco. I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
The markets. No, you can't just run screaming from the room.
A lot of economists are just throwing up their hands and saying, we don't know.
But you don't have to manage this alone.
What are you looking at to give you some sort of compass through this period?
Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
What is your early read as to the scope and scale of this plan?
Bloomberg Markets. Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus symptoms and testing. If you have any one of the following symptoms, a high temperature, a new continuous cough, loss of taste or smell, you can now get tested. Do not leave home for any reason other than to get tested. Find out how to get a test and how long to isolate at nhs.uk/coronavirus. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Thanks to National Lottery players,
The Emerald Centre are now providing emergency food supplies and support for people in Bedfordshire like Alan.
Thank you.
And £600 million of National Lottery funding is on its way to thousands more local projects in England and across the UK during these exceptional times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. The best sports story all day, 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. ESPN Daily.
Search ESPN Daily to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying to
standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Among the companies out with earnings after the bell, HP Enterprise, it reported net revenue for the second quarter of $6.01 billion. Estimates there, $6.19 billion. Shares of HP Enterprise trading lower now by about 5%. It was a down day on Wall Street today with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declining. Ongoing concerns about China and the U.S. in terms of trade tensions. Also, just what will an economic recovery look like? Stocks lower with the S&P down 23, a drop of 0.8%. The Dow down 101, lower by 0.4%. NASDAQ down 90, a drop there of 1%. 10-year up 2/32 with a yield of 0.67%. Gold up 1.3%. 17.25 the ounce. A rebound for crude today up 1.6%. Now with a 34 handle, 34.01 for West Texas Intermediate crude. Recapping, equities lower. S&P down 23, a drop of 0.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Before we get to this next interview, I have to say, Carol, hearing $34 a barrel oil, I mean, it's sort of amazing just given where we were a few weeks ago. I mean, it was not that long ago that we were talking about negative oil in some ways. So I do feel like that's a story that hasn't been told as much in terms of something that may be giving people a little bit of comfort. At least that's something that's not sort of falling out of bed. A little bit of normalcy. We can all use a little bit of that. Well, meanwhile, We heard a little bit of this sound a few minutes ago from Ed Baxter, but David Weston did catch up earlier with the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, to talk about the state of the economy and getting people back to work. Let's check out part of that interview.
We want the economy to open up, and the science is the path to that. Testing, tracing, treating, isolating. It has to be a scientific answer. And, of course, we hope and pray for a vaccine and some therapies. But in the meantime, we have testing, and that's what we need to use to get a handle on the size of the challenge we have, to trace it and to treat so that we have fewer deaths. That is the answer. Now, in addition to that, and we have that as a strategic plan in our HEROES Act, a strategic plan to do that with, as you do in business, have a goal, have a timetable, have milestones, have benchmarks. That's exactly what we have. In addition to that, in order to support the economy, we honor our heroes by keeping state, local, territorial, and tribal governments functioning. These people, many of them on the front line of risking their lives to save other people's lives, now fear losing their jobs. All of these services that are rendered are not only jobs, but they meet the needs of the American people. That helps the economy. And then third, putting money into the pockets of the American people. We all know that issues like unemployment insurance, food stamps, and the rest really provide stimulus to the economy, and we have to do that. And we think in our package, the HEROES Act, that we do just exactly that. A scientific path to open the economy safely and soon. Supporting our heroes to keep those jobs in place, which are important to the economy, and again, the stimulus that money in the pockets of the American people provides.
Of course, the question on everyone's mind is the prospects of passage of the HEROES Act or something like it, and when it might happen. We've heard today from Secretary Mnuchin that he talked to you at least last week about something. He agrees something needs to be done. Not sure how quickly. President Trump today said he's working with Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, on some sort of package. Are you in active negotiations? How much hope do you have that we'll have something relatively soon?
Well, I'm optimistic because the American people fully support what we are doing. 2-1 already, just newly passed. They support the provisions of our bill and oppose the Senate obstructing it. So I have confidence in public opinion. Also, when it's bipartisan across the country, we have less than $1 trillion that goes to states, localities, tribes, and territorial governments that provide jobs for people across the country. So we have Democratic and Republican mayors, governors, county executives, and the rest very enthusiastic about the legislation and making their voices known to the members of the United States Senate. This is very unusual that we have such a strong bipartisan advocacy for legislation of this kind, which is meeting resistance in the Senate. But I don't think for long, because what we have in the bill is disciplined, it's focused, it's all necessary, and it has broad bipartisan support in the country. It's just a matter of time. They want to pause, but as I've said here before, hunger doesn't take a pause. Losing your job doesn't take a pause. All of the paying the rent doesn't take a pause. We really need to meet the needs of the American people and at the same time provide stimulus to the economy. And even Secretary, as you know,
sorry.
I'm just saying that you mentioned Mnuchin, but also the head of the Fed, the chairman of the Fed, Powell, has said that it's responsibility of elected representatives to use the tax and spend responsibilities that we have in a way that helps the economy. And he has indicated that there's need for more.
All right. Well, and that was, of course, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi speaking earlier today with Bloomberg Television Radio anchor David Weston. That last point, Carol, I think is such an important one. We hear it from every economist. We hear it from the Fed chair himself, which is, listen, the tax and spend piece of this, that comes from the Congress. The Federal Reserve is doing a lot. There's more potentially that Jay Powell and his gang can do. But from the fiscal side, That comes down to the Congress and that what the speaker said about the pause from a political perspective, hunger doesn't take a pause.
Well, the JPOW World Tour, by the way, those T-shirts, as you said, happening on Zoom, Fed equals lending, not spending. Those are the T-shirts you can get. What's interesting, though, it goes back...
The lending, not spending tour
to
2020. You got to make these T-shirts.
We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Totally. What's interesting is it goes back to Peter Coy and this whole idea of you open too soon, it's likely to cost both lives and livelihoods. And then you have the economy won't get back to full strength if people are afraid to leave their homes. And if we start to see fresh outbreaks, it's tricky. Nancy Pelosi is trying to make sure people can have confidence, they can stay home if they need to, and that they have some sort of livelihood, right?
Which is why she says, you got to trust the science. We need testing. I mean, it all falls back to that. The lending, not spending tour.
You're liking this, aren't you?
I am so into this. Like, can we design a T-shirt while we're hosting the show? Yes,
we kind of can.
The answer is yes.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Si se puede.
Come on, man.
I know Michael McKee is in for one. So it's happening. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street took a small step back, losses ranging from 0.4% to 1% across the averages, with the Dow down 102 points, the Nasdaq 91, the S&P 23. Investors worried about increasing tensions with China that could threaten the partial trade deal between the two nations. The fact that almost 2.5 million first-time jobless claims came in last week, it didn't really help either. Companies are finding working from home is actually working for them. Facebook now plans to aggressively push remote hiring starting today. CEO Mark Zuckerberg says the company had worried productivity would fall off a cliff if workers weren't in the office. Now, the company's found that hasn't happened. Now that stores are reopening, Starbucks is seeing business return, store sales up by about 2/3 of comparable store sales last year in the past week. Analysts are watching that. They're looking at Starbucks sales as a barometer of our willingness to leave home and spend. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
You're living in a world built on science, political and economic.
You've got to believe the labor market gets hit.
Computer and medical.
Clarify where we are on a test.
It all makes a difference.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of governmental response?
And it's all here.
He expects the virus to peak quite a long time from now.
Get your science straight.
The hand washing campaign, is this actually a good strategy?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. In-depth analysis.
Hi, I'm Dan from NatWest Manchester branch. We know life's hard right now, but if coronavirus has affected your finances, we're doing our best to make things easier. If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you could get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we could help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Behind the highlight reels, championship rings, and colossal paychecks, there are sports stories that fuel, deepen, and even challenge our love for the game. For true tales of underdogs, anti-heroes, and game-changing innovators, explore a sports documentary on TuneIn, like Sports Wars, telling the origin stories of classic rivalries, Raise Sports, about the concussion crisis that threatens football's future, and Dunkumentaries, a podcast devoted to the beauty and power of the slam dunk. For these and more, search sports documentaries on TuneIn.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly, and of course watching the markets and watching earnings, because NVIDIA is something we've got to break down with our old buddy Dan Morgan.
Absolutely. And then coming up after that, Ian Traeger is going to be with us talking about the hotel business, and then Nancy Spielberg. Really looking forward to that, talking about the movie business.
Exactly. All right, let's get back to your top business stories. And we did have a bunch of earnings after the closing bell. On it all is Charlie Pellet.
All right. Thank you very much. You guys get great guests, by the way. I said it earlier in the week. If you don't listen, you're nuts. You got to stay tuned to Bloomberg Radio. Fantastic guests coming up, talking about a number of after-the-bell earnings reports. Before I get to those, though, I want to begin with Dell Technologies. It has suspended some employee benefits, signaling that the computer hardware giant is cutting costs to contend with the weakening global economy. The company will discontinue contributions to employees' 401k retirement plans under a matching program beginning June 1st and continuing until at least the end of the fiscal year. Shares a little change. Dell Technologies up by about 0.5%. Earnings, NVIDIA, we'll be talking more about this in a moment, sees second quarter revenue in the range of $3.65 billion, estimates $3.28 billion. Also says it is evaluating the timing of resuming share repurchases. NVIDIA shares little change, lower right now, last check, down by about 0.2%. Also out after the bell, HP Enterprise. It reported net revenue for the second quarter of $6.01 billion, estimates there $6.19 billion. HP Enterprise shares down now by about 5.1%. Millions more Americans applied for unemployment benefits last week, indicating major job losses are continuing 2 months after the coronavirus pandemic started shuttering businesses. But the question on everyone's mind, just how quickly does the rehiring begin? Tiffany Wilding is chief U.S. economist at PIMCO.
I think the broader thing is the ability of businesses to hire people back, is a function of how much, revenue and business pickup they're seeing. So this is really going to depend on how confident consumers are to go back out and kind of resume their normal activities.
Morgan Stanley CEO James Gorman has joined other finance industry leaders in warning their operations will not be fully back to normal this year. Speaking at the firm's virtual shareholder meeting, Gorman said he expects closer to 50% of employees back in offices by the end of the year. The number has varied significantly across the firm's global locations. It was a down day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all slumping today. S&P down 23, down 0.8%. The Dow down 101, down 0.4%. NASDAQ down 90, a drop there of 1%. 10-year up 1/32 with a yield of 0.67%. Gold down 1.3%, 17.26 the ounce. Crude West Texas Intermediate up 1.4%, now at 33.96 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, you know when someone is really a friend of the show? You know how you know, Carol Masser?
How do you know?
Because we just throw them right into the cauldron. We're like, yeah, the numbers are coming out. We need to talk to you like 60 seconds later.
He becomes a reporter like the rest of us.
Exactly. Luckily for us, we have one of the best in the business with us, Dan Morgan. He is with Synovus, of course, down in Atlanta, talking tech, talking NVIDIA. The numbers are fresh, Dan. The stock is a little bit off, but it looks like on bottom line and top line, at least a slight beat.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Jason. Yeah, I think we had all of 4 minutes to get these numbers.
It's an eternity. Come on.
Yeah, come on. I know, but anyway, when we kind of look at these numbers, it's kind of interesting. You know, if you look at obviously the headline numbers in terms of EPS and revenue, that was a beat. You just announced the fact that they came out and said we're going to do about $3.65 billion in the upcoming quarter, and that was ahead of consensus, was around 3.2. But you know what really stood out to me, guys, was the tremendous strength in gaming. That was an area that was a big beat on. They came in at $1.34 billion. I had $1.26 billion. And then, of course, the cloud. Unbelievable number, $1.14 billion. That was in line with what I was looking for, but that represented not only an 18% growth rate quarter to quarter, but also an 80% year-over-year growth. And if we think of NVIDIA right now, guys, I know last time I was on, we talked a little bit about TI, came out with their numbers. They seem to be in all the right places, right? Because we still have strength in cloud, data center, gaming, and 5G. And the weak areas are obviously smartphones, Apple and their Broadcom and all the guys that feed them, auto and industrial. Analog devices, Texas Instruments, the ones that Jason knows so well. And so they seem to be in all the right spots, and they had great numbers.
Well, this is a stock, I mean, let's remind people, this is a stock that is up almost 50% this year, Dan, in what is certainly, I mean, a recovered market in some ways, but still upside down. You've got a lot of names that are down tremendously. I mean, let me just look at Texan and names that you just mentioned. I mean, TI's down almost 12%. Intel, they are, let's see where they are. These are names you know better than I. They're up barely about 3.5%. As you say, NVIDIA, and you did a great job of reminding us, I mean, this is their sweet spot, gaming and cloud. So it's a different sort of company in many ways, right?
Well, you're right, Jason. And, you know, you think about the multiple. Of course, the stock has made this huge move. It's about 44 times next year earnings estimates. And you just mentioned some of these other names. Intel at 12 times, AMD at 36 times. So, you know, obviously they're growing at a very strong pace, but the multiple, right, is way up there. And the stock has made a huge move. But you'd have to say, based on the environment that we're in, right, in not only semiconductors, but just you were talking about Dell earlier with their changes they were making with their company, you know, in the hardware space, you know, it's starting to get a little dicey. And so companies that can continue to deliver growth are going to be rewarded, right, Carol?
Yeah, totally. I'm listening. I'm here.
I just took over this conversation because I get so excited about chips.
I know,
and I get so excited talking to you, Dan.
But you know what's interesting, you know, Dan, and we always learn this with you, you know, and Jason brings it out, you know, we bring it out all the time about the whole idea that not all chip companies are the same. And maybe they tell us different stories. But when you look at the sector, I mean, what do you think are the things that we need to be thinking about as investors about what's going on chips more broadly? Just got about 50 seconds here.
real quick, Carol, the areas to focus on are obviously the data center, which we just saw with these NVIDIA numbers, right? The 5G infrastructure build-out. That's a whole other group of companies that are affected by that. And then artificial intelligence, which NVIDIA is a big player in. So you've got these companies that can, if they're focusing on the growth areas within tech, you should continue to do well, right? But if you're in areas that are going to be a little difficult, like smartphones and enterprise, and we've talked about this before, the IBMs of the world, it's going to be dicey. But these companies are going to be rewarded because they're in the right position.
Well, clearly 4 minutes is all you need to get, totally read in on the numbers and give us great perspective. Dan Morgan, so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
We're never going to give him minutes to look at. We're just going to be like, go.
It came out 30 seconds ago. Go. All right. Always grateful to Dan Morgan. He's the best down in Atlanta. Coming up, Ian Traeger.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Someone so well known in the hotel industry, also building residences. So I'm curious to see what he has to say about where we are today and where we go. All right, back to World and National News headlines and back to Ed Baxter. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Carol. Dr. Anthony Fauci reiterating today that the country had better not move too fast, the globe for that matter. There'll be dire consequences. He says COVID-19 will not be totally defeated until there's a vaccine for the entire globe.
If you don't control an outbreak in the developing world, it's going to come right around and bite you the next season.
He says, wall cannot be built to isolate from developing countries. And he says, although social distancing has slowed spreads, if you look at the data, it has not ended the spread yet. Indeed, though, Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, says data is looking much better. And New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says absolutely the same.
Each day brings with it surer signs that we're moving closer to being able to enter phase 2 of our economic restart.
He says it has to be balanced, though. United States Senate now has 2 bills aimed at China and human rights. The first yesterday has a delisting for Chinese companies involved in taking human rights. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Balance of Power with David Weston says China has a dismal human rights record, but
we have to have a relationship with China, and we judge every action as to what it means to us as well as what it means to them. So I look forward to seeing that.
Today, Senator Chris Van Hollen introduced a bill regarding sanctions on China for treading on Hong Kong's rights.
Today's news that they intend to, formalize some of the additional laws, take away additional freedoms, but essentially destroy Hong Kong in its current form.
Yeah, Van Hollen on with Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli there. And President Trump says today he's going to withdraw from the Safe Treaties Act, but can negotiate later. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
Dreamlab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events. He does! Fabry wins it! To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
The NHL is always on the ice with these awesome hockey podcasts on TuneIn. Get your goal with the Spittin' Chicklets podcast.
Brian Yandel, Keith Yandel, thanks for coming on. What's going on?
Nothing much. Glad to be here. You guys got some nice digs here.
We heard you took Southwest 2-stop flight to get out here.
Yeah, well, just...
Carve up the ice with NHL at the rink.
The other day I wrote a story. Artemi Panarin, Semyon Varlamov, Sergei Bobrovsky, they all helped arrange for the purchase of N95 masks to benefit hospitals in their respective markets. This is another one of those positive stories you're seeing.
Or create your own power play with Locked On NHL.
All these teams invested future assets to take a run at the Stanley Cup right now. Like, all of those teams would have a real serious gripe, like trading these multiple first-round picks to make a run at a cup. You're right.
Discover these and more NHL podcasts right here on TuneIn. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In there. So we had to blow it up and do Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick Six on TuneIn to listen. Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights. Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis of the latest wrestling storylines, turn on the WWE podcast.
Big Steve edition.
Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
Because now on the show, everybody's kind of the same size, but as soon as I saw you, it's been...
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. After the bell earnings news, HPE, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, reported declining sales, saying that it would, quote, realign the workforce and cut costs over the next 3 years, signaling that the stumbling global economy has dented demand for servers. HPE shares down 4.9%. NVIDIA stock stock we were just talking about. First quarter revenue, $3.08 billion. Estimates $3 billion. Shares up now by just about 0.3%. A move lower for U.S. equities. Trade tensions sending stocks lower. The S&P down 23, down 0.8%, ending the Thursday session at 2948. Nasdaq down 90, a drop of 1% today. The Dow down 101 points, lower by 0.4%. 10-year up 3/32 with a yield of 0.67%. Gold down 1.2%, 17.27 the ounce, and crude up 1.5%, 33.99 a barrel on West Texas Intermediate crude. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thanks so much. Well, our next guest really needs no introduction. He's been involved in the hospitality industry for 5 decades and counting, from Studio 54 and the Palladium nightclub back in the 70s to really challenging and upending the hotel industry with creating the boutique hotel in the 1980s. He created the public brand. He continues to shape the landscape. Back with us is Ian Schrager, hotelier and founder and chairman of the Ian Schrager Company. He joins us on the phone from Long Island. Ian, it is nice to have you back with us. I wish it was under different circumstances. Tell us a little bit about your world, professionally, personally, how things have been impacted and how they're going.
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I think I'm holed up out in Long Island with my family and waiting this thing out and waiting for it to end. We're all healthy, and we're looking forward to when we can get back to our normal life. Not a new normal, but our normal life. The hotel business is under siege. Public is closed, as well as a lot of the additions. But I look forward to them opening soon. I feel that we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and there'll be a lot of uncertainty involved. But I'm quite